Hola, soy Alejandro Sahuquillo y estoy aquí para que triunfes hoy con Dr. John Gibbs, mejor conocido como Dr. Knowitall. Mr. Dr. John Gibbs, how are you?
I'm doing great. And lo siento that I do not speak Spanish well enough to do this in Spanish. I wish I did.
Don't worry, I will dub it afterwards. First of all, I wanted to start by telling you thank you very much. Muchas gracias, because I'm studying some Japanese. So when I have some doubt about languages, I go to Google Translate. But when I'm seeing something about AI that I don't understand, I go to Dr. Knowitall's Translate, and it's clear to me. And I think it's a feeling that most of the Tesla community might have, because most of investors, I'm a Tesla investors, we are invested because AI and some technical keynotes and AI days and autonomy days of Teslas are too technical. So in your channel, you explain it really, really well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess that's a consequence of being a teacher for my whole, professional life, basically. So yeah.
And it's very interesting because thanks to this interview, I've been able to research you. And as you've said, I think you've been already 14 years teacher in Georgia University, right? And
right.
you studied physics in Princeton
Right.
with all the Nobel Prizes. You studied also English literature. You've done a PhD. You have a master in artificial intelligence. You also have as hobby, as far as I know, you love history. And that shows me, and also everybody that sees your channel can see your breadth and depth of knowledge. And I wanted to ask you, for somebody that knows so many subjects and so well, what is your opinion of Elon Musk? Because I think you made the video about his interview with Dan Carlin, and I think it's really underrated how much Elon Musk knows about so many subjects. So what do you think about that?
I guess I'll start with the short version of the story, and that is that in terms of people that I want to meet in the world, and also people that I would be completely starstruck by, if I met Brad Pitt or, a famous movie star, I wouldn't care at all. But if I met Elon Musk, I'm afraid I would actually be speechless. But at the same time, he's exactly the person I would love to go get a beer or a coffee with. I think that the two of us would actually hit it off, because he really does. He doesn't just know one narrow topic really well. He knows many topics. And the whole title of my channel, people take the title very seriously, oh, he knows it all. But it's because when I was growing up, and honestly, before the internet came around, so, we're talking about back in the old days, back before the mid 1990s or something, before Google, my family would call me and ask me things. They would just call out of the blue, and they would say, what's the definition of soporific or something? And I would say, like, oh, that means that it makes you, sleepy. It's boring, or would make you sleepy. And they'd say, like, because I would win a bet for one or the other of them. So anyway, they called me Mr. Know-It-All all the time. And so that when I started the channel, I was like, well, hey, I've got a doctorate, so I can call myself Dr. Know-It-All instead of Mr. Know-It-All.
You are.
But there's negative connotations to being a know-it-all, because I always think of myself as a person who knows just enough about everything to be dangerous. So I may not know everything, but I can have a good conversation. And often, even if I don't know exactly, I will convince people that I know what I'm talking about. So hopefully I do better than that on the YouTube channel. I try to stick to things that I actually do know for the most part.
No, of course you know. And you've said that if you met today Elon Musk, you would be speechless. So who knows, maybe in one of his earning calls, I think it was a couple or 3 earning calls ago, they asked him, would you do some YouTube interview with Dave Lee or Rob Maurer? But if he made an interview with you, which would be the first question you would ask him?
Oh, I think I would ask him who his hero was. I think you're just putting me on the spot here. I did not think about this before, but I think that's the question I would ask first, because I would want to know who right now. I think Steve Jobs for a long time was very much in that boat for me, back in the 1990s and the early 2000s. But right now it's Elon Musk. And so it's like, historical figure or person who's alive right now, doesn't matter, but who would be the person that he would want to do an interview with if he had the opportunity? I think that would be my first question.
Yeah. and about artificial intelligence. That is the main topic of your channel. For me, it's really amazing to see all the presentations of Andrej Karpathy, but they are even more technical than Elon Musk's, because usually he's speaking to developers. And I studied, I mean, I don't have a technical background. I'm not a developer. I had some startup, but okay. But I studied something about artificial intelligence, and it's really hard to understand. But for me, he seems a super bright person. You that you speak his own language, what is your feeling about Andrej Karpathy? How would you translate it in normal language?
I think you started off by talking about going to Princeton with the Nobel Prize winners, and I struggled through the physics degree there. I was definitely out of my depth. There were people who were much smarter than I was there, and so I think that's where I would put Andrej Karpathy in terms of his understanding of artificial intelligence. Nobody's going to give him a Nobel Prize for that because it's more of an engineering thing, but if there was a Nobel Prize in artificial intelligence, he's the kind of person who is going to win it. Like, no questions asked. And that's where I put him. So, I'm just like this little minion who has like a little bit of knowledge, and he's way up here in terms of his ability to understand. And, the fact that he sort of redid GPT-3 on a whim, just for the heck of it. Like, it's like, who does that? Nobody does that kind of stuff. And he did the, what was that? Oh gosh. I did some research on him. I can't remember what it was, but he basically created, he made himself a human Turk. Like, he did that whole thing where he created a baseline for everyone by himself. Like, he was willing to just sit down, and I think it was judging images or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. But basically, he just sat down and just evaluated hundreds of thousands of pictures in order to create a human baseline. And I was like, normal people don't do that. Normal people don't have the patience or the willpower to do something, or the intelligence to do something like that. So, that's where I place him. He's definitely at the very, very top of human beings alive today in this area.
Okay, that was my feeling, and I think everybody's feelings, but it's good to hear from you. Right. And of course, with all the smarts of Andrej Karpathy and Elon Musk, we have great products. 13th of December of 2021, does that ring a bell to you? 1 year ago, the 13th of December?
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the day that we got our Model Y. I know that.
Yes. You received your Model Y? No, what was that? The most important
okay. I was like,
event in the world that day. No, in the universe, that was the most important day. And I wanted to ask you, like, since you've been trying, especially autopilot, and later when you received full self-driving beta, what has been the rate of improvement of especially full self-driving?
It has been astounding. When I got, let's see, was it 10.3? I think I got first. Yeah, because remember they had that problem with it, and so I got 10.3 and then 10.3.1 the next day. I thought, I think my original prediction was 12 to 18 months away from release, when it would be feature complete. Whether or not it was approved, couldn't make. Who knows what the laws will be? But every single release, and especially this 10.8 release, is getting to the point where, and Elon Musk, I'm halfway through the interview with Lex Friedman. It's a very long interview. Yeah, and I've been very busy the last 24 hours. But anyway, one of the things that he said was that they can see the whole fleet, and they do it based on interventions per million miles. And he didn't give a number, unfortunately. I wish he had, but he said that they're watching that number go down, right? So if it's 100 interventions per million miles, and then the next iteration is only 75, and the next one is only 50, you're marching down towards zero interventions per million miles. You're eventually going to get to the part where you don't have to intervene. And at that point, I would say it's feature complete. And Elon has definitely said he's thinking before the end of 2022 that it will be not finished. It will never be finished because there's the March of Nines and you can always do better, but it will be demonstrably better than a human driver, an average human driver. And I agree with him at this point. I think there's Elon time, but I think that lately Elon Musk has kind of toned that down a little bit. There was when I really started following him around 2014, 2015. He would make predictions that were ridiculous, right? He would say, "Oh, this is going to be done by the end of this year," and of course, he would say full self-driving would be done by 2017 or something, and those were ridiculous predictions. But I think he's starting to understand a little bit better how things work. But also at the same time, he's got the right team in place, and so again, regulatory bodies. NHTSA, the EU, whoever, that's going to take a long time for them to approve these things. But I think in terms of feature completeness and you think about drivers, not every single driver is as good, right? So you've got a bell curve, the standard bell curve. I think that middle part where, well, let's say better than the middle part, let's say one standard deviation off. So like the top 67 or 70% of drivers, it will be as good as that by the end of next year at the rate that they're improving. And I think the big next thing that we will see will be full self-driving beta 11, which he said is in alpha right now. So hopefully within 2 to 3 weeks, we'll see it. That's a major rewrite. And it's something I have not had a chance to do a video on yet, but I think it's going to be the very next video I do, is how important it is that Andrej Karpathy is talking about the change from using processed video data to raw photons. And I think that just goes right over most people's heads, but it's absolutely critical in terms of their being able to create better self-driving. And they're completely, as far as I understand, they're completely retraining the network with version 11. Number one, it's going to be a complete stack. So the highway driving will be the same as the city driving, will be the same as the parking lot summons driving. All of that stuff will be the same stack. But number two, they're going to go from processed video to photons. And that is a huge change.
And I think in Lex Friedman's interview, I think Elon Musk speaks something about that, but I was preparing this interview, so I couldn't hear it really well. Can you explain? Because right now, you mean like process images, like right now they pick the images and they pre-processes, they make some filters and they, what do you mean? Like they're going to use raw photons instead of the process images?
Okay. So let's take a look, like my phone, right?
Yes.
So everybody, I think that the naive assumption is that when I press the shutter button, that the lens on this camera represents reality.
Yeah.
I guess that would probably be the best way. I wish I had access to an old film camera or something, but an old film camera opens up the shutter and lets light in, and that light impacts the piece of celluloid in the back, and it changes the chemicals, right? And then you develop it and you get a picture. Inside a computer camera, which is all cameras pretty much these days, there is a whole bunch of software that's doing that effectively. So it's taking in the raw photons, it's converting them into something that makes human beings happy, right? If we got the original raw picture image out of the phone, and I think there are apps where you can do this, it looks terrible. It looks absolutely terrible. There's noise, the log, the gamma curve is way off. There's just all sorts of things that look really bad to the human eye. So the cameras process all of this instantaneously, right? Well, not almost instantaneously, within a fraction of a millisecond. And then you see the image and you say like, oh, that looks really beautiful. That's a beautiful sunset with very bright highlights, and there's shadows, and it's representing all of that. So all of that stuff is being done in camera, in software. And so Teslas, of course, are doing that too. They have been making changes. I've noted before that the backup camera looks very different than the other cameras. If you bring up the camera views, most of the camera views look really dull. Do you own a Tesla? I can't remember.
I don't own, but I'm watching videos the whole day long.
Right. So if you see the other cameras, all the ones except for the rear view camera, they all look very, very flat. And the
yellowish,
really,
no? A little bit.
Yeah, yellowish, kind of greenish. They look really bad to human beings. The backup camera looks much more normal. And the reason why is because you use the backup camera as a human being, right? So you're backing up in the parking lot and you need to look at that image to determine whether it's safe to back up. So they make that one look good to us. But all the other ones, the processing is minimal already, but it is doing something where it's taking the raw photons and it's converting it to a raw image, and it's putting a log curve on it and things like that, that make it amenable to the AI training, but it's not the original pixel data. And so what they're doing is they're just stripping out that piece of the pipeline. So they're going straight from the little receiver, right? The little chip that's inside these cameras is getting its little photons are hitting that, and it's directly taking those now, as opposed to, well, it will with version 11, but it will be taking those directly, and it will be using those as opposed to utilizing this pre-processed image.
Pre-processed.
And that gives them huge, they have to completely retrain the entire network. Everything has to be completely retrained, right? Because it's all different data. According to what the network, according to what the neural network models are seeing, everything is brand new. So they've had to start from scratch, and it will be interesting to see, because I see this kind of thing where when they make a major change, often it kind of gets worse for a little while and then gets better. So we will see what happens with version 11, whether it gets worse and then goes better. But each time what they're doing is they're increasing the headroom. So you could get to a higher state, better quality driving before you hit the ceiling. So yeah, I hope that helps explain. Again, I'm thinking about this for doing a video myself, but I haven't like really kind of outlined exactly how to say it best. But I hope that helps to.
No, I understood it quite well. No? Now they're going to use much more information, so there won't be information lost in the process. I guess that it will be harder, and they will need. And
well, I'll tell you one major advantage of this, if I have, is
yes, sure.
When you process this video, you lose a lot of information in that processing step. And so since they're training post-processing, what they're losing is not so much normal, like you're driving, it's a beautiful sunny day, there's no clouds, you can see far away. That's not the part where they're probably really concerned. It's the part where, let's say you're driving middle of the night and it's raining, so it's wet and there's no other cars on the road. So it's very dark, and there's a pedestrian up in front of you. I had this happen to me last night. I was driving in my neighborhood. It wasn't raining, but it was pitch black. And I came around a corner so that the headlights didn't see this person, and she didn't have a light on. I don't know what she was doing, but anyway, and I came around the corner and I saw her, and I was like, oh geez. And I moved out of the way. And then I looked down at the Tesla thing after I was sure it was safe, because I was driving myself, and it saw her. Actually, no, I take that back. The car was driving. So it was on full self-driving, and it actually moved over. And then I said, oh, and then I realized that that woman was there. So it saw her first, which was great. But as I looked at that, what I was realizing was, okay, here's a situation where it would probably have seen her, maybe because of the curve, no, but let's just take a straightaway. Using the raw photons, it can collect very few photons to realize that there's a human being there. So way before I would see her, and way before the traditional neural network model would be able to see her, this version will be able to see her. So it's those kinds of situations. And people have talked, I have a lot of people on Discord and on Twitter ask me about FLIR, which is something infrared. What is it? FL? I can't remember what the FL is.
Sandy Munro, I think he did a video about FLIR, right?
He's very much a proponent of it.
Yes.
And I, for a period of time, was thinking to myself, yes, this is a really good idea, that using something like that would be good. But the problem is that then what you have to do is you have a whole other set of sensors, right? At least to the front, you've got to have now FLIR cameras that are pointing out there and looking for heat signatures. Yeah, that's great. But Elon Musk's whole thing, right? He says no part is the best part. So, and you've got a sensor fusion issue. So obviously, if you can solve this problem with the cameras, you're better off doing it that way, because you have fewer sensors. You don't have sensor fusion issues. So I think what they're trying to do is go like, how deep can we go just with cameras and not deal with any other sensors? And if we can do it, if we can demonstrate that we are 1,000 times safer than a human driver under terrible conditions at night with fog, without having to use any of these other sensors, then they don't need to use those other sensors.
Yeah. And you, apart from expert in AI and having a Tesla, you're also a Tesla investor, and you invested in March of 2020, okay, a little bit. Which was the reason? Because you've said you've been following Tesla since 2014. Which was the reason? Okay, there was a dip because of COVID, but you as a Tesla investor, when you put some money, what was the main reason for you investing in Tesla?
Oh, well, as with most people, I wish that I'm a terrible investor. So,
Yeah.
but because I'm incredibly risk averse, I think I would have invested in Tesla probably in 2014 or 15, except that I had family issues, personal issues. I was going through a divorce, and my ex-wife, I mean, not to speak ill of her, but she got all of my money. So so I started all over again. I felt like a college student. I was like, I had nothing and I had no money, and I was living in a tiny little like 1-bedroom apartment again. So it was a very strange experience. But I think otherwise I would have been very aggressive about investing then. So, and then I kind of lost track of it, and you've got, your life goes on and on and on. And so by the time I really thought about it again, it was probably 2018 or 19. And then I started thinking like, okay, I should probably buy some shares. And so it was one of those things where I'm a bad investor. If I had gone ahead and pulled the trigger, it only would have cost a few $100s to buy a bunch of shares back then. Yeah. So by the time we got to 2020 and the world was collapsing, it was actually probably Stephen Mark Ryan watching Solving the Money Problem. Yeah. He said, buy it now. And I said, okay, fine. I'll do it. Yeah. It's like, I'll buy it now.
So you should say thank you to Stephen Mark Ryan.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes. I appreciate that. And I've been buying, little bits ever since then. But that was the bulk of the purchase that I did. And it, of course, after it split 5-1, then suddenly it was like, I had a whole bunch of shares. So, so that was convenient. I'm hoping for another 5-1 split. Then I'll have a lot more shares.
Yeah, a lot more. And I guess you and many Tesla investors, after AI Day, maybe you would be much more bullish. Some others, maybe they didn't understand anything. And I found about your videos. I have to tell you, thank you very much, because I made a long video about AI Day not long ago, 3 weeks ago. And your videos were extremely helpful. The depth of and the clarity of your videos to explain in 6 or 7 videos everything that happened in AI Day was really interesting. But I wanted to start.
Well, I mean, you can tell how deep everything was just in the fact that I had to do so many videos. Yeah. It was a little overwhelming.
It took me 3 weeks of research your videos and other videos and read and everything to do this video of, I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I don't know, long. But I wanted to ask you, there's something that really struck me that you said, after watching AI Day, I applied to Tesla for working with Andrej Karpathy's team. Which was the main reason, or why did you apply just after AI Day? I know that you applied before, but in AI Day, what was the main reason for you applying?
Well, first of all, wow, your research is very thorough. Thank you. I got rejected from Tesla 3 times in one day. So, because the day I actually somehow applied twice because they said they lost the AI Day application. So I applied again with the same application. And then I'd applied for full self-driving beta, but I had a 99, not 100. So I missed that cutoff, and all 3 of those happened on the same day. I was like, woohoo! So, but the reason specifically that AI Day that I applied is because the area that I teach in is 3D simulation and 3D animation. And I thought, holy crap, I really want to be involved in what they're doing with the simulation engine in particular. I think that what they're doing with that is astounding. And like I said, I would love to be part of that. I have a personal fear, which is that I'm just old. I mean, I'm no longer such a young guy anymore. And it sounds like such an intense environment that I would worry about my ability just physically to be able to maintain the level of work. But then again, I'm doing 3 jobs right now. So, I did take a vacation. I feel much better. 10 days off was really helpful because I was really like this close to the edge before I got done. But anyway, I would if Tesla said they would hire me, I would say yes. I think what I would do is tell everybody, I would take a leave of absence and say, like, don't quit your day job yet. We'll see what 6 months does, but I would definitely be on board for trying for 6 months and see how I did.
And let's say that you apply for Tesla and they tell you, okay, you are inside Tesla. First day, as we've seen with Joe Justice, he said, okay, once you enter, you can do whatever you want or whatever you can be most valuable. What would you like to do? You said like the simulation, but if you could do anything you wanted in Tesla.
Wow. Well, the first thing I would do would probably not be very useful for Tesla, but I would love to go just walk the factory floor and see how I'm a software guy. So like software, I understand and I'm fairly comfortable with that. But I feel like the first thing I would want to do would be to just take a complete tour of the factory floor, talk to the people who are actually doing the hardware construction and everything. Because then when I got back to doing the software work, which is what I would be useful at, I would understand the end goal. I think that's part of the problem, is that if I was isolated, and that's one of the reasons why I think Tesla is just like fascinating, because they're not looking at isolating everybody. They don't say, oh, here you go, you come in and here's your little silo, and that's where you're going to work, and you're never going to see the factory floor. In fact, you're going to work 500 miles away from where the factory is. So I think part of the beauty of this is that you're like, okay, if I make a software change here, what happens on the line? How does the car actually change? How does the usability of the car change? So that's the first thing I would do, is just walk the factory floor and probably ask people questions until they got sick. That's one of the things I do. I just ask questions constantly. It bothers the hell out of people. But anyway, I would do that. And then I would turn to the simulation engine, and I would look at where I could be of benefit. I have a startup company right now that works on
automatic, no? IO.
Automatic, yeah. So what we're working on is a thing that helps rig characters to make them move more naturally. That's the super tiniest version of that. But anyway, that I think I could be helpful in terms of creating the technological backbone. I'm sure a lot of it's already been done, but helping to automate as much of that as possible. Because one of the things they can do with the simulation, of course, is they can create 1,000 or 1,000,000 similar scenarios to something very weird. So, circumstances that don't happen very often, but you need to have a lot of data points for that. They can use the simulation engine to help create those data points out of nothing. Well, out of the reality, but anyway, they can make a whole bunch of different ones that are very similar. And I think that's something that I understand because I've been in this game for a while, but a lot of people don't understand is what's called biased data sets. And I think where people hear about that a lot of times is from things like, I don't know, Google had problems with this several years ago, where they had mostly used like European light-skinned people in their data set for training. And so when they had people from India or Africa or Japan or China or whatever, when they had people from other areas, it wasn't identifying their faces properly. And that is a biased data set. But you can also have biased data sets in terms of, and this is actually an example from a lot of my AI teachers. What they would say is, let's say you had a data set that had 99.5% of that data set was just dogs and cats. Let's make it easy. So you had a data set and you had 1,000,000 images, and 99.5% of those images were dogs and 0.05% of those images were cats. All that AI has to learn is always predict dogs, and it will be 99.5% accurate. It's always going to win, right? It's way better than flipping a coin. It's almost 100%. But that's a terrible, terrible AI because all it's learned to do is just whenever you get an input, say dog. So what you need to do is rebias that data set. So what you would need to do is take that 0.5% of cats and make it 50% of the data set. But the problem is, if you just replicate those 0.5, it'll become really good at identifying those particular cats. But if it's a million, what is that? 50,000, something like that. If I'm getting the percentages right. But anyway, if you project that out and create a 50% of the data set with that, then the cats, you'll only be able to identify those cats. So what you really need to do is you need to be able to find more examples of cats from the world. Now, on the internet, that's really easy. But let's say it's something like, I just love the moose walking across the street that they had in AI Day, right? So what you need, and that could happen if you're in Alaska or something, or Wyoming, that really could happen. So but you're not going to get a lot of data points of that. So what you need is a simulation thing that can generate photorealistic versions of this moose walking across the street, or in my example, the cats. So you want to be able to produce hundreds of thousands of these cats that are all different from each other, but are all definitely cats. And then you have an unbiased data set and you can actually train on that. So that's the reason why it's so important to make sure that you have a good data set and that you have a simulation engine that can take these tiny little places. Because again, right, this neural network engine, it can predict, if it just learns to predict no moose, it's going to be right 99.99 something % of the time. But when it's wrong, it's going to run into a moose. And that is a bad idea. So it needs to understand what a moose is and don't hit a moose.
I wanted to ask you about this because I don't know if you know the book 2041 from Kai-Fu Lee, the writer of AI Superpowers. He was in Google China, and he's really quite famous of writing AI.
Ooh, put a link to that in the description of this video.
I will put. It was really interesting, and I wanted to ask you because there are, I think, around 10 short stories, and they are fiction stories that are written by a colleague of Kai-Fu Lee. And then Kai-Fu Lee, that he has a technical background, he explains what are the implications in this AI scenario 20 years from now. So one of the stories is a kid, he's a 12 years old kid, and they tell him, do you want to work for this company that you have to be a virtual reality driver? Because he was very, very good at video games, driving video games. And he said, yeah, why not? He goes to the company and he starts, and it's super realistic. So he's driving, and they pay him if he's being a taxi driver. So he has to bring people. So if he brings them safe and fast, they give him money. So he's really happy. And after a few days, he realizes by watching the TV that these scenarios that were really strange, where there was a tornado, a tsunami, a terrorist attack, they were real. He watched in the TV that in Japan there was being a tsunami after he had driven that exact tsunami. So then he realized that he's a driver for a company of robotaxis that in case of edge cases such as tsunamis, terrorist attacks, tornado, whatever, they need those real people because they don't have the data. So, and afterwards, Kai-Fu Lee, he says, okay, neural networks are trained on data, and on edge cases, we're going to need still people. How do you think Tesla in 10, 20 years is going to solve these strange scenarios?
Oh, gosh. So that's actually a really cool story. It reminds me of Ender's Game just a little bit, the Orson Scott Card novel, where he thought he was playing a video game, but it was actually, they were really attacking the aliens. But I'm always careful about 20 years. That's a long time, because think back to 2001. So we didn't have iPhones or any kinds of phones like that. The internet was tiny, tiny, tiny. I mean, Amazon definitely existed and I used it, but it was a bookstore.
No Facebook.
Self-driving cars. We didn't have electric cars except for the GM EV1 that was in the process of being destroyed. We didn't have the safety features we have in cars these days.
But I mean, don't even think about 2041. Think just in 5 years' time. How is going to solve Tesla this kind of problems? Because I also, sorry to interrupt you, but I also read something that you said that at the end of November, you said something like full self-driving is not very good at error correction. And I guess, I don't know, they have to think about how to solve things that is the first time in history that happens.
Right. So I've actually, I can't take credit for this because this was one of my Discord Patreon patrons. And sorry, I can't remember your name right now, but I can't remember who it was specifically that said this. But somebody was saying that for a period of time, the collaboration between human beings and AI is going to be the safest. And that was kind of a revelation to me. I was like, oh, that's true. So it's not an either or. There's going to be a period of time where the car will be safer than the human. It's already the case. I don't know, if you drive long periods of time, Madrid, by the way, is a beautiful city. I visited back in 2018. It's lovely there. But, so if you were going to drive from Madrid to Paris, that's a long drive. I'm not exactly sure how many hours, but it would be long. And let's say you had to start off after a long day of work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and drive there. And you're tired and you have to drive through the Pyrenees. And, and you're eventually going to become a very poor driver because you're just exhausted. And it's nighttime and you're not good at that. At that point, a full self-driving car, as it is right now, a Tesla right now, is significantly better than you are as a driver. On a highway, on a controlled circumstance, after a long day at work, it's just going to be a better driver than you. But then there's the weird edge cases. And at that point, like you said, a tsunami hits or a tornado comes by. I don't know why it would be. Somewhere in the Loire Valley of France, a tornado comes blasting through. At that point, as a human being, are going to be a better driver. So a collaborative effort is going to be better. So this full self-driving most of the time, and the human being to take over the edge cases, the weird things, driving through parking lots. Parking lots are very complicated. Ever since I've started dealing with this full self-driving stuff, I've realized just how complicated parking lots are. It's kind of chaos. People just drive wherever they want to. It's very low speed, but it's also very uncontrollable, and pedestrians walk out. So anyway, so in that situation, a human being is probably going to be a better driver for a significant period of time. So I think this sort of collaborative effort is the way to go. As for the particular story, that person was the person who was taking over the edge cases. I don't know. Maybe that would happen. I don't know. That requires an entire infrastructure. I think what needs to happen instead of that, I think it's a really interesting story, and certainly Waymo does that right now. But I think what needs to happen instead is that, okay, so let's say a robotaxi circumstance where the robotaxis are driving in Madrid, and then they're only regulated to drive within the city limits, right?
By the way, I'm from Valencia, even though I love Madrid.
Oh, I'm
Valencia.
sorry. I thought you were. It said.
No, don't worry, because I told you Madrid time.
I have not visited there. I really do want to visit there. Okay, well, we can take wherever you want. Barcelona, Paris, Madrid, wherever you want to go.
Okay.
It's a large city. But anyway, so we have a robotaxi that's allowed to drive within those city limits, and it's been approved by the regulators. What needs to happen is not that the car has to be able to drive 100% of the time perfectly, is that the car needs to be able to fail properly. So let's just say, as a human being again, and this happens to me every time I go to Florida. I don't know why, but you get to Florida, and at some point in the drive, a huge monsoon rain happens, and you can't see anything, and it's just pouring rain. And the best thing you can do is get off the highway. Go under a bridge, pull off at an exit, and just wait, because the storm will blast through and then it'll be fine again. So under those circumstances, that's exactly what the full self-driving car, it doesn't have to be able to drive then. All it needs to be able to do is say like, oh, this is too dangerous, and find a safe way to stop. So the problem right now is the car is driving along and it doesn't recognize something and it goes, ah! And so you as a driver have to go, whoa, got to take over immediately. That we can't have happen. You can't have the robotaxi driving and then instantaneously say, you have to take over immediately, because that's not what a passenger in a taxi is going to be ready to do. So it's that I call it graceful failure. It needs to fail gracefully. It needs to just figure out a way to get off the road, stop, take a break, figure out what's going on, and then start back up again. It needs to do that.
maybe in this failure situation, we have the Tesla bot to help. But by the way, what was you made a video really interesting. Well, what was your reaction when you saw live the presentation of the Tesla bot? What did you think?
I have to admit to maybe being stupid or naive, but when I saw the person come out and start dancing, I thought for a moment that was the Tesla bot. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I thought they've already got one. Yeah, I was like, they've got it and it's working. You know, because Boston Dynamics does have those robots that dance around and stuff. So yeah, and then I of course realized it was a person in a suit. So I was like, okay. But I think even Elon Musk is having a hard time figuring it out. Again, I will liken it just to a phone. When in 2007, when the iPhone came out, it would have been incredibly difficult to predict how ubiquitous that phone has become and how many different use cases. I would never have guessed that I would have a watch with a heart rate monitor and an oxygen level monitor. And if I fell over or my heart rate got weird, that the phone would potentially call the emergency ambulance service, you know, which by the way, not for me, I'm not too worried about. For my parents who are you know, quite old. Sorry, mom and dad, but you know, but for them, it's a huge safety thing to have that. If they have some sort of an issue, even a hard fall, that it can call an emergency service for them. Not something I would have predicted in 2007, right? So these are the kinds of things where it's difficult to know once you create something that's useful in so many potential ways, how is it going to be used is a really interesting question.
But to get the Tesla bot, the Tesla bot to a useful stage, how do you think it's going to be trained? Because of course they don't have drivers like you, Tesla clients that you're training the network. So how do you think it's going to be trained? Because I've heard different stories, but I wanted to know like your approach.
We end up coming to a situation. One of the beauties of the whole Tesla full self-driving thing is that they have people paying them for the privilege of training their networks, right? I paid not just for the car. Grand, I paid for the car and $10,000 on top of that for the full self-driving package. So they're making money to allow them to train. That's probably not going to happen with the Tesla bot. What I could see, and I was looking around, I don't have a headband, but if they can come up with a little headband that they could put on people and you know, pay them a small amount of money per day or something to walk around with this headband on with a bunch of little cameras, just like the Tesla bot would have. That seems like that would be the ideal way to do it, because you have human beings who are approximately the same height as the Tesla bot walking through environments and doing things, and with something fairly unobtrusive, like maybe a little hat, a beanie hat or a band, that you could have enough instrumentation that you could tell what was going on.
I think I heard James Doma that, by the way, I think that it would be great to have a chat between you guys. Yes. I think many people have told you, but I tell you in my video. I would love to see that chat. I think that I heard him that one way of training would be with videos, with YouTube videos, that they could be trained like with a kind of simulation, but I don't know how.
Well, again, this is where the simulation that they're working on currently.
Yes, that you've said it's going to be super huge. Yes, and apart from different products, you made a video about how Tesla as a company, especially the factory, is a cyborg. That the interview that I made with Joe Justice, it was mind-blowing. I remember the following day when I was dubbing it, I had to stop and to send an email to Joe to tell him, wow, I don't know what you've explained. I've never heard to anyone with such a depth of understanding. And what do you think about this way that they organize the work and the feedback loop of the employers of Tesla with AI?
So are you talking about the factory itself at this point, or?
like how Tesla as a corporation is used, like especially about your video that you were saying Tesla is a cyber corporation. So there's people on one side and there's AI on the other, and they're merged together. We don't have bosses. What we have is an AI or applications or whatever that they're telling us, okay, you're doing this correctly, and they are giving us reward.
Right. Again, as with you, this is something brand new to me. So again, as I was saying, this is something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And you know, when you asked me that earlier question, what's the first thing you would do at Tesla if you were working there? The reason why I would walk the factory is not because if I went to work at Ford, for example, and I don't know why I would, but I wouldn't go out and walk the factory floor. It would be less interesting. It would be interesting, but not that interesting. The reason I would go and walk the factory floor at Tesla is precisely because I need to understand what Joe Justice was talking about. So all of this agility and the ability to see where the AI is working, how the different cameras and television sets and my phone app, how all of those things interact, that would be the part that I would need to understand. So I think it all comes down to the speed of the feedback. So again, I liken it to a human being, right? If you touch a hot stove, your body reacts instantly. You get instant feedback that says, oh, that was a terrible idea, right? And you don't do it again because it really hurt and you get a blister on your finger. So it's that kind of thing. If it takes, in a standard, any type of corporate situation, and like I said, because I've got this startup company, me and my partner are thinking about this. We're like, when we get employees, how do we do this ourselves? And it's not trivial. It's not easy to figure out how to make this happen. But if you have a standard business scenario, it could be weeks or months between the time you do something and the time you get a reward or a punishment. And if you've ever tried to train a dog, not that human beings are dogs, but we are a little bit, you know, if they sit or if they lie down or something and you give them a treat 5 minutes later, they don't understand what's going on. You'll never train them that way. So it's got to be instant, right? So you say sit, and then you give them a treat when they sit down, and then they learn, oh, so it's the same thing, right? If you have a factory that can give you this instant feedback, you get a gold star, right? Things are great. That was a really good idea. If you get that the second you do it, or alternatively, bad idea, right? So if you get that kind of feedback immediately, that is the way human beings are really good at that. We will adapt to anything if we get feedback fast enough. The problem with all traditional businesses is that the feedback loop is not quick enough. And it looks like what Tesla is doing and what Elon Musk is really thinking about is how do we tighten that feedback loop and make it as short as possible. And clearly that's where computers come in. And that's why I call Tesla Factory a meta cyborg, because it's utilizing AI as kind of a sensory system and a feedback system, not necessarily really the brain, but more the control system of your body. So, you know, something like your spinal column, where it's telling you if you did a good job or a bad job. Is this pleasurable or not pleasurable, right? It's giving you that sense immediately, but in a factory context with thousands of workers instead of with just an individual body.
Yeah, and with this agility that you're saying, they've been able to make the 4 or 5 safest cars that they were rated by the IHSS, the fastest car ever, the best EV, the most technological. But what is amazing is, like, we Tesla fans and Tesla community, we're excited about the thing that we're most excited is about the future products. So I wanted to ask you, like, to rate from top to bottom, which products and services of the ones that have been already unveiled or have been said that Tesla is going to make, you're most excited about of these ones, okay? The Cybertruck, Tesla Bot, Robotaxi, Tesla Semi, Tesla Roadster with the SpaceX rocket thrusters that will be flying and everything, and Model 2.
Okay.
Can you rate them from top to bottom?
Oh gosh. Oh, do you mean for me personally or for society? Because
for you, for
okay,
Dr. John Gibbs.
Actually, let me do society first. I think that might be easier. I think that in the short term, the Model 2 or whatever they're calling it, the $25,000, the mass market Tesla is in the next 5 years. That's the most important thing for society, because that's going to allow many more people to afford to buy an electric car, and that's really good for the environment, and it's good for safety and everything else. So that long term, the Tesla bot absolutely is going to be the most important thing. And then I think that the semi is actually for society a very important thing.
Yeah.
The the Roadster is the least important for society. That's just a toy. And I think the Cybertruck is also the least, second least important for society. Now, as for me, if I had the money,
and we also have the Robotaxi. You already have a Robotaxi, a useful Robotaxi that it has been approved in the cities.
Right. The Model 2 and the Robotaxi in a lot of ways, I think, are connected together.
Okay. And now you...
No. I think, again, for society, I think you're short-term. Okay. So inexpensive car, Robotaxi, and this is in terms of time. So in the next couple of years, the inexpensive car, then about 5 to 7 years from now, the Robotaxi, because that's going to really change the way we commute. And then longer term, say 10 years is the Tesla bot. Okay, so there we go. And I think that's really important for society. For me personally, if I had the money, I would probably be the most excited about the Roadster. I don't know that I will ever get to drive in one. Maybe I will. It would be really cool. But I think that for me personally, I think the Cybertruck is really fascinating. I have one on pre-order.
Let's say that you go your first day at Tesla, that I'm sure after this interview, they will hire you with Andrej Karpathy. No, I don't think you will be boss of Andrej Karpathy, but more or less at the same level. And they tell you,
look at the same level.
Look, Dr. Gibbs, you know the interview that you made with this Spanish guy? We already have all these things. So which one do you want to see first? So which one, not for you, like which one would you like to see first?
I think the mass market car, the Model 2 or
the Model 2.
C. I think that's the most important thing for them to get out soon. In fact, honestly, if I were Elon Musk, and I know he's going to piss off a lot of people and it would not be profitable for the company, but I think in terms of Tesla's mission, getting the $25,000 approximately car out the door is the most important thing they can do. The Cybertruck is super cool, and I really want one for personal reasons, just because, I mean, it's just going to be wild. But I think it's much more important for society that they produce an inexpensive car. It's not profitable. It's not good for Tesla as a company, but it is the most important thing for society overall. Because again, we need to stop selling internal combustion engine cars. And we need to stop drilling for so much oil. All of that stuff is really important for society. So if I were in charge, I would say screw profits. We're making plenty of money right now. We need to produce this car first. That's what Gigafactory Texas would be producing right now.
Yeah. Okay. So you will be able to see it on your first day.
I would probably kill Tesla in the process. It would not be a good financial move.
No, I'm sure it will. I wanted to ask you now more about the general future of artificial intelligence, because when I read books about artificial intelligence, I see three different baskets. Like one that of some researchers, lately I read one book that is Artificial Intelligence, a Guide for Thinking Humans, of Michelle Melanie, I think. And she says more or less like there's no way we're going to get general artificial intelligence with what we have. And that she says like the problem are not that machines are going to be really intelligent. The problem is like machines are and will be in the following decades really dumb, and we give them the power as if they were intelligent. Okay, so this is one basket. The other baskets are there are two sub baskets. The ones that they think, okay, artificial general intelligence is going to happen in the following decades, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades. And in this basket, there's the ones that they say, okay, it's going to be a good thing for society, such as recursable or other features. And others that they say, okay, this is extremely dangerous and we have to do something, such as Elon Musk, such as Steve Hawkins, and I think Bill Gates as well. So in which basket are you and why?
So number one, I worry about general artificial intelligence because I am completely in agreement. I think well, it's definitely Elon Musk that said this, but he said it will be the last invention of humanity because at that point, I think there's a lot of people, including science fiction writers, who imagine in general artificial intelligence as matching human beings and stopping. That's not the way this is going to work. This is an exponential. So humans are inching forward on the evolutionary scale, hopefully improving a little bit at a time, whereas we've got AGI is really stupid right now. But as it goes up, it's going to be exponential and it's going to cross us and it's going to go rapidly past human understanding. So at that point, we're committed. Like once you get something like that, it's going to be so much smarter than people and think so much faster that we have no control over it anymore at all. And so we better damn well hope that we've done a good job in like putting in some sort of morality or ethics into this thing by the time it gets there. Now, in terms of when I think we're going to get there, it's definitely not happening with this generation. My personal feeling is that what we will do is we'll follow Tesla's lead and we will create a whole bunch of narrow artificial intelligence. So we'll create something that is able to drive. And I'm fully believe that Tesla's going to get there. It's going to be better than a human driver soon. But that's all it's going to do. It's only going to drive. So it's the same thing as your toaster, right? It's just a really, really, really smart toaster. But you know, your toaster can toast bread and it can toast a bagel and you can set the settings and you can get a fancy one that has a bunch of stuff on it. But that's never going to do anything except toast your bread. So that's what a full self-driving car is. And then we'll get to a Tesla bot, and a Tesla bot will be able to, it'll be able to do more things, but generally speaking, it will be able to walk around in the world. It will be able to screw a nut onto a bolt in a factory. Maybe eventually it will vacuum your floor for you. You know, you'll have a maid like from the Jetsons, but it's not going to be able to carry on a conversation about what is consciousness or what is artificial intelligence. You know, it's not going to be having a conversation like we're having today. So we'll have siloed a bunch of things that are really good at what they do and probably better than humans. And again, Google is a form of artificial intelligence. It's a very, very smart search engine. If you type in the right string of characters, it will find everything out there. It's way smarter than we are. It has a much, much bigger memory than we have. So we will utilize it just like that. We'll utilize all of these narrow AIs to do what we need to do. The hardware, I don't believe it makes it possible to do general AI right now. I just actually watched a Veritasium video yesterday about analog computers. Derek, Derek with Veritasium. It just came out. Well, it was while I was on vacation, so it may have been a few days ago now. But he talked about analog computers that they're starting to make a comeback. And there is a sense in which I actually kind of think that what might enable general artificial intelligence is some sort of combination analog and digital computer. That digital computers may reach, because what they're doing is digital computers are simulating analog stuff like what's going on in our brains.
Yes,
and that's all analog. That's not digital. So there may be a better way to create fast AI by using analog computers as opposed to digital computers. I don't know. Then also you can look at some other things like some of the breakthroughs that IBM's come out with lately. So but anyway, we're talking about probably 20 years from now before this hardware actually gets there. I'm very much of the opinion that we are going to stall in terms of AI It's been the last 10 years have been an incredible run, and we've made it really far. But I think that something like full self-driving is taxing the current version of AI and the current version of hardware to its limits. That's as far as it's going to go, and we're not going to get to general AI. I don't know, 2 years from now, when the first Skynet wakes up and says, you were wrong, then somebody can say I was wrong. But I think we're probably 20 years away from having the hardware and software capability to do general AI, which is a good thing. I am not looking forward to the time when that happens, because like I said, when it gets there, it's going to go straight past us.
So really fast, yeah.
So I think we need more time. More time is a good thing. we need the time to think about this before it actually gets here. But
okay,
yeah, so anyway, that's what I'm thinking about that, at least.
With all the time that we're going to have, we will be able to be reading books. I see that you have many books in your shelf. And I wanted to ask you, like, which are the best non-fiction books that you've read in your life about whatever that you think that they have, I don't know, changed, or you think that they're really valuable?
Gosh, I read a lot of nonfiction books, but the books that stick with me are always fiction.
Or even fiction, if you think.
Yeah, it's very interesting because people are very much two camps. The reason why I really like Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. I was
it's great.
Recent. I was reading that because, of course, I'm doing a startup business, and it's the idea of how do you generate something from nothing. I think that's really fascinating. I love Zen and the Art of Archery. Little tiny book. Oh gosh, he's a German writer. But anyway, that was very transformative to me as a young person, and made me really think about. I'm a very big fan of Zen Buddhism in terms of like philosophies, and I've read a lot of books about that. But I don't know. I keep going back to it, but I really, really love Dune. I think that what Frank Herbert did in that book, that novel is now, it's the same age as me. It came out the year I was born. So it's 56 years old. And I think that, again, what I find with fiction writers is good fiction writers are thinking about the world in ways that are revelatory. And it's rare for people to write nonfiction that's that good. Most of the time, nonfiction is describing the world as it is right now. And fiction writers describe the world as it should be, or as it could be. Or, and that's a positive and a negative, but that's why I find fiction more, it sticks with me more, because it's people who are thinking like, what will the world look like? What could happen? And
I'm sure then that AI 2041, you will love it, because it's both fiction and non-fiction. So they explain the reason why these stories happen. Sorry that I interrupted you. Dr. Gibbs.
No, it's fine. I am looking forward to that, actually. And I've gotten to be so busy right now that what I do is pretty much use audiobooks. So I'll queue it up as an audiobook and just listen to it as I'm doing things. So yeah. But I do, it's one of those things where if I'm on vacation, which I actually did, I got to sit down and actually read like a physical book, which is pretty rare anymore. So anyway, but yeah, I'm just, just weirdly enough, it has nothing to do with fiction, but I love The Great Gatsby, for example. I don't know if you've ever read that book, F. Scott Fitzgerald. No. It's a classic.
I know it, but
right. And that just, it has a lot to do with human beings. Maybe it has to do with the fact that I'm on the autism spectrum. So I have a difficult time with human beings on one-to-one basis. You just ask my wife; she knows. She's always like, you don't
look like.
So anyway, so I think a lot of times I'm fascinated by understanding humans better. I feel like a little bit like what's that Robert Heinlein's book, A Stranger in a Strange Land. See, I keep going back to fiction. But I feel sometimes like I'm just a little bit off in the world and don't quite understand it. And so it's helpful for me to understand about human beings more.
But by the way, for those that don't know, you wrote a book that is Nothing Left to Tell, right?
Right.
And is it a fiction book or?
No, it's actually about Samuel Beckett, who is somewhere, he's back there on one of those shelves. Okay. Got a bunch of his books. It's my PhD dissertation, actually. It's a published version of it. And but he, of course, being a playwright, wrote incredibly dense, like most of the plays that I focus on. Well, actually, I do Waiting for Godot, which is the famous one. But I focus a lot on his later plays, which are super, super short and very dense. And again, that's one of the things about fiction that I really like, is that a lot of times the best fictional work, you have to read or watch many times in order to really understand it. So yeah, so Nothing Is Left to Tell. It's actually a line from his play Ohio Impromptu, which was a very, very short play. And the play consists of two people. I think being European, you will appreciate this better. Most Americans are like completely befuddled by this. But, you know, it's a play with two actors who sit at a table, open a book and read from it, and close the book and look at each other. You know, that's the extent of the stage directions in it. Yeah. So it's very, very, very bizarre.
Interesting.
Yeah, but extremely powerful. So that and it required explication and thought. And again, you know, all the books that I've ever published are nonfiction, but I have written a great deal of fiction also. Just nobody's interested in it. No, nobody's interested in it. It's just they sit on my computer hard drive. So
I'm sure they would be great.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Dr. John Gibbs, usually in my interviews, we finish with a game. So I want you to say just one word, the first word that pops out to your mind of different things that I'm going to tell you. And you cannot repeat the word, okay? But it has to be fast. Are you ready, Mr. Dr. John Gibbs, Dr. Knowitall?
Okay, we'll see if I know it all.
Okay, FSD.
Beta.
Cybertruck.
Polygon.
Dojo.
Oh gosh, The Matrix.
Tesla bot. Just one word.
Super cool. Oh, cool.
Yeah. 4D space.
4D space. Time.
Future of AI.
Oh gosh. Simulation.
Roaster with SpaceX package.
Super cool. Oh, that's two words. Super.
Yeah. Super. Semi.
Useful.
Andrej Karpathy.
Goat.
Transformers. AI transformers, I mean.
Future.
Convolutional neural networks.
Past.
SpaceX.
Oh gosh, I can't say future again. Space.
Elon Musk.
Mars. I can't repeat
Elon Musk.
Best.
You could say boss because if they are going to hire you. Okay. Okay. That was the last one. I wanted to ask you here in the frame, the people that will watch it, they can read your Twitter account. I will link your YouTube. I know that you have a lot of merchandise that you have like really beautiful. Can you show, yes, the Tesla bot caps and everything. So where else can they follow you or buy your stuff?
I think YouTube and Twitter are the best ones. So, and there's also merch store. This seemed appropriate today because it's physics is the law. Everything else is a recommendation. That was a quote from Elon Musk, but because of the Lex Friedman interview when he was really talking a lot about how physics is the law, I thought, well, it's appropriate. So yeah, my merch store is Dr. Knowitall knows at itemorder.com. So people can go there. There's a lot of fun things. I almost said this when you said Transformers. I was thinking about the 1980s Transformers.
Oh yeah.
That, by the way, that game was really hard. I'm terrible at coming up with things like that really fast.
Okay, I will link all the things you've said. And nothing. I hope that you come to Valencia and you can get to see the best city in Spain or maybe in Europe.
Oh, so you're gonna say it's better than Barcelona?
Of course. No competition at all.
Okay. The smackdown is here.
You know that paella, that is really famous all around Spain, it comes from a lake that is 5 miles south of Valencia, La Albufera. So the best the best paella and the original one is made here in Valencia. So I will invite you when you come, and it will be a pleasure. As a tradition, all my guests, they say this sentence when they finish the interviews. That is, because I start all my videos saying, hola, soy Alejandro Sahuquillo y estoy aquí para que triunfes. So I'd like you to say, Dr. John Gibbs, to say, hola, soy Dr. Knowitall y estoy aquí para que triunfes, which means, hi, I'm Dr. Knowitall and I'm here for you to succeed.
Okay. Can you say the second part again?
Yeah. Hola, soy Dr. Knowitall y estoy aquí para que triunfes.
Okay. Hola, soy Dr. Knowitall. Está aquí
para que triunfes.
Oh, para tu triunfes?
Yes, very good.
Okay.
Actually, that was very good. I see that you came back from Mexico. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll just pronounce it incorrectly, but aside from that, it'll be good. So. Okay.
You live in the best moment in history. Enjoy! If you like this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, share it with the whole universe. And since I want to make interesting videos for you, I need to know what interests you. Write your suggestions. If you have enjoyed this type of content, subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any future videos. I'm working hard to make the best possible content for you, but it takes time. Consider supporting me in Patreon, the best moment in history, so I can stop living under a bridge and continue creating content for you. There's a link in the description. Thank you very much from the heart. Gracias.